In today's video, we have all the latest trade talk leading into the NHL trade deadline. Today, we have a big focus on goaltenders. Who are the targets for some of the teams looking for goaltending help? We've got the latest on Linus Ullmark, UC Saros, Jake Allen, and more. Plus, what are the Canucks up to in regards to Phil Kessel? Could we see a signing there? And what are the Vegas Golden Knights up to with their injuries and long-term injury reserve pool that they can draw from? Could they go after one of the top wingers available at the trade deadline? Plus, we have all kinds of injury updates as well, including some big ones regarding the Flyers. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a lot to cover here today. A bunch of trade rumors we want to look at, lots around goaltenders. And first up, we'll have a lot of news regarding some injuries and other roster moves that we have going on around the league. We'll start with Philadelphia, where they have definitely the most significant news today regarding injuries. The latest on Jamie Drysdale. We know he suffered but appeared to be serious shoulder injury. For right now, they were saying kind of, day to day, week to week, but the latest intel is that they're hoping he can avoid surgery. So we're probably going to see a similar scenario. Like I know for Senators fans, you've seen this with Shane Pinto, Josh Norris, when they've had their shoulder injuries in the past couple of years. They usually try a rehab scenario, and sometimes it works out well. Sometimes it does not. In Norris's case, the rehab didn't work well. He ended up coming back, only played a handful of games, then needed to have the surgery anyway. So clearly with Drysdale, they're hoping he can be back before the end of the regular season's the hope. He's going to be out for at the very least a few weeks, probably looking at, I'm going to say probably at least a month, if not into the early part of April. I mean, it could be sooner. That's just a guess on my part based on what they've said. And they're hoping he'll be back before the end of the year. So we'll see, but it's certainly a big blow. I mean, obviously, when they picked up Drysdale, I think a lot of people assumed guys like Walker and Sealer, who we are going to talk about further into this video with the latest rumors around them, were all but goners, especially Walker. Now there's some mixed opinions out there, so we'll see, because they also have Rasmus Ristolainen, who's also out injured. He's out now week to week, so he could be gone for a couple weeks. That's a couple of big players there on their blue line that play a lot of minutes. And then you get Travis Konechny. He's also out now. He's listed as day-to-day. So the Flyers are a team that's kind of in that playoff spot right now in the Metro, but there's a lot of teams kind of nipping at their heels trying to catch up. And having all these injuries are certainly not going to help their case when trying to hang on. Now, I know the injuries, a lot of people wonder how that's going to affect their plans, and will it at all? We'll discuss that a little further into the next segment of the video on the trade rumors, but they're going to be a very interesting team to watch here. In Toronto, we get word that their game tonight against Vegas, they're going to be missing defenseman Timothy Liljegren. So he's out. No word on exactly what he's dealing with or what kind of time frame he'll possibly return at. But that's going to require them to play 6 defensemen tonight that are all lefties, so no right shot defensemen in the Leafs lineup tonight. Liljegren's the only one currently on the active roster that shoots right. Connor Timmins is a righty, but he's injured. We're dealing with mono right now, so he's likely gone for an extended time. So that's not good news. I mean, it's, we see a lot of defensemen struggle to play their weak side. Some guys can do it, some guys don't do it so well, and all 3 pairs tonight are going to feature a left-handed defenseman playing on the right side. So I'll be curious to see how that works out. I mean, Vegas has their fair share of injuries right now. They're still a dangerous team. From what I've seen of the recent games, they can still bring it. They're not an easy pushover. So we'll see. I know the Leafs have had a good game against them recently too, so I'm sure they're feeling confident, but be curious to see how this entire decor of lefties works out for them tonight. In LA, bad news when it comes to Adrian Kempe. Of course, last night's battle with the Edmonton Oilers, which the Kings dropped a 4-2 decision. Kempe was hurt, and he's going to be heading back to LA because obviously they're on the road right now in Western Canada. Kempe's heading home to get further testing and imaging done, with an MRI done in LA coming up, and he's at the very least probably going to miss the rest of the road trip. We'll probably know more in the next day or two what the full extent of his injury is and what kind of timelines, but they're already without Arvidsson, who just came back recently as well. So that's a couple of important wingers for the Kings now out of the lineup, and we don't know the timeline on Kempe, but if it's any period of time, it's definitely going to have an impact, I would say, on their deadline plans for making moves, because they're already a team that's been rumored out there. They certainly could use some insurance at the very least in goal and well up front, and you never know. Most teams like to add depth defensemen too. So I think they're a team that probably wants to do a little bit of everything, and if they can get their current wingers that are on the roster already healthy, that would certainly, help a lot. So we'll see. That's going to impact things as well. Artem Zub continues to remain out tonight. The Sens are in a back half of a back-to-back. They played in Washington last night in a wild game. 6-3 loss to the Capitals. 9 goals, and neither team really had that many shots. It was a pretty crazy game. It's the first time, I think it's like 33 years that a team gave up 6 goals on the number of shots. I think it was because the Sens only gave up like just over 20 shots. It was ridiculous. The goaltending was horrific last night. Forsberg gave up, I think it was 3 or was it 4? I know he played the first period and then he was out. I believe it was 4 goals he gave up. And then Korpisalo came in and he wasn't great either. Korpisalo is going to play tonight, but that's another big part of what we're talking about later. Sens goaltending. So Zub, unfortunately, he's out. It's going to miss his 3rd straight game. Hopefully after the road trip, they get back home. They play Friday against Arizona. The hope is he'll be back for that one, but we don't know for sure just yet. In St. Louis, Justin Falk's returning to the lineup after a stint on long-term injured reserve, so he's been out for an extended time, so he's back in action for St. Louis. In Calgary, Andrei Kuzmenko has been out of the lineup for a couple of games. I think this is going to be his 3rd straight. 3 games ago, he missed, and they said he was ill, so he was an illness that kept him out of the lineup. And they had a couple of good games, and I've seen some people saying that he's been a healthy scratch, can't get back in the lineup because the team's been playing well, and they didn't think it was as much as they probably want to put him in. They don't really know. It's not fair to take somebody else out, so to speak, but that's not entirely the case. I've seen reports today saying that Kuzmenko is actually still battling that same illness. It's not quite clear exactly what he has, but it's some kind of virus that's given him a real hard time. So that's why he hasn't been back in the lineup. I mean, they may have made a decision anyways based on how the team has played, but he is indeed still not 100%. So they'll give him more time. And in Pittsburgh, update on Brian Rust. He's now considered week to week. So with Guentzel out, Rust is out. The core guys are in Pittsburgh. Crosby, Malkin, Letang, Carlson, they're healthy, they're playing. But, man, their supporting cast has really been weak and taken a beating this year. Obviously Raquel and Smith and, these guys are not really helping a whole lot. So, I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how the Penguins make out down the stretch. In a nice moment last night, Dallas Stars rookie Logan Stankoven, of course, who's bounced up and down. I think I've talked about him probably 4 times in the last week, either going recalled to the NHL or being sent down. He was, I think, recalled at least twice before he ever played. He gets in the lineup last night, gets his first NHL goal, and it was also his birthday. So that was one heck of a birthday present from the Dallas Stars, and not only get him his first NHL game, but he earned that goal, played really well, and didn't look out of place. So great game there from Stankoven. The Stars do have some really good prospects that are still coming up between him and guys like Maverick Bourque. And the best part is all of their top players. You look at Wyatt Johnston too, who's still really young. They didn't have, these guys were not all high picks. They were all like late first or second rounders. They've done a real good job at finding I want to say the diamond in the rough, but sort of that way, because usually once you get past that first half of the first round, it's, not, there's always players that make late first rounders, second rounders make it to the NHL all the time. But they've just done exceptionally well with hitting on those picks. So it looks really good on their scouting and amateur teams for sure. Phil Kessel in Vancouver. Is this going to happen? What's the latest there? Is Phil the Thrill coming back? And the latest intel comes from Rick Dollywall, of course, well plugged in Connect Media. He says that Phil Kessel's now been in Abbotsford working out for 2 weeks. And both sides, according to his reports, from Phil's side and the Canucks side, they both want this to end on a positive note and lead to him getting a contract for the remainder of the season. I would suggest it might take right close to the deadline before he gets a contract. I don't think it's going to be much before, because I think they're going to want to be analyzing the team and kind of working on other moves to see exactly where he fits. I'm sure he'll probably take a league minimum contract, but it'll be a prorated amount for the rest of the year. So they're going to have to factor that into their plans. So I suspect, it could come sooner, but it wouldn't shock me at all if this is somewhat last minute as he continues to get into close as he can to game shape. But all the feedback's been positive. I know the first couple of days it was looking, some reports were saying it was a bit rough, that you could tell he was obviously a long layoff and wasn't in shape. But after a couple of weeks, it's believed that everything's looking good and is fully expected that Phil the Thrill Kessel will get signed and will be a Vancouver Canuck from the trade deadline towards the rest of the season and see if he can help this team make a run in the playoffs. Now, Elliot Friedman had a lot of different reports today on Jeff Merrick's show. He was talking about the Vegas Golden Knights, obviously with everything going on with them. Believes that they have heavy interest in Penguins forward Jake Guentzel. Of course, like I said before, the Penguins are not 100% dealing Guentzel, but if they're not real close to the playoffs in the next, if they don't have a bit of a run here in the next week or so, I do believe Kyle Dubas will go into sell mode, and I think he will start working towards the future. I don't think they're going to go into a rebuild or like a tear down or anything of that nature. I don't think it's going to be anything drastic, but you are going to see some pieces get moved. Like we know that Guentzel very likely moves. Vegas is just one of the teams interested. Obviously with Stone's injury the way it is. As I said before, I know a lot of people have been complaining about the LTIR usage. I honestly believe Stone's injury is very legit. My only thing is if he miraculously shows up for game 1 of the playoffs again, that's going to look bad. And I honestly think that the NHL could have a different way of handling how everything is kind of monitored and everything like that. I guess everybody's okay with it if their favorite team is using it and it helps them. And if their other team's doing it and their team's not, then they don't like it. That seems to be the mixed opinion on it. But Vegas very much interested. In Pittsburgh case, like I said, not only Guentzel, looking at Riley Smith's likely going to get moved. I think it's possible on Rickard Rakell, depending on the offers. When it comes to the blue line, maybe a Marcus Pettersson goes. Hard to say. Maybe a Pierre-Olivier Joseph. I wouldn't completely rule him out. And a goaltender like Nedeljkovic especially could be a nice bargain move compared to some of the top prices on starting goaltenders out there. So I expect Pittsburgh to be busy. And I do expect Vegas to be very much involved with Guentzel. And they seem to get their way more often than not. So we'll see how that works out. In Philly, as I mentioned, it's leaning more and more likely that Sealer and Walker will be traded. It may or may not be as a pair. There's believed to be a couple of teams that have inquired about getting both of them. It's believed that if there's any chance of that happening, they're going to have to give up a first and second round pick. I think we never really get confirmation, but there's believed to be at least 2 teams that have asked about that with Philly, and there's belief that it could be a combination of either Dallas, Toronto, or Tampa. Hard to say exactly which ones they were for sure, but all those teams do make sense. I can see why they'd all have the interest for sure. There is some degree of interest from Philly to sign Sealer. They have been having extension discussions, but they're not close. Apparently, Sealer's looking for about $1 million more per year on a 3 or 4 year deal than they're currently willing to look at. So right now, that gap is kind of making things more and more likely that they will be traded. Hard to say if they go together or not. But like I said, in the case of Toronto, they desperately need a right shot defenseman, which Walker fits that mold. But hard to say what the price tag is going to end up being here, because clearly there's a lot of players on the market. Guys like Hanifin, Tanev, etc. will probably set the market. Guys like Sealer and Walker might not go until those guys go. We'll have to wait and see how the market gets established here. I know in the goaltender market, lots of talk. We know the LA Kings are a team that's probably looking for goaltending help. They've been mentioned a lot. We heard that they kicked tires on UC Saros for the better part of the last year. The latest intel from Frank Saravalli says that the Nashville Predators, I do think they're open to trading Saros, but if they're trending towards being a playoff team by March 8th, it's less likely that he gets traded. Because if they're going to want to go into the playoffs, they're going to want to obviously try to win. I would say that if he's not traded by the deadline, the odds really increase that it'll be a summertime deal, maybe at the draft or around free agency. I do think there's a really, really high chance he does get moved before next season. It doesn't have to come now, though. But, it really is going to boil down to where they're at in the playoff hunt, because they're going to want to be as best equipped for it if they can make it. But Montreal's goaltender, Jake Allen, has been getting a lot of links to the LA Kings again. That's been a rumor we've heard kind of off and on over the past few weeks. They've got a lot of young players there that are believed to be available, like potentially an Arthur Kaliev or an Alex Turcotte, which I'm sure Montreal would have some degrees of interest in. And in terms of Kaliev, I do wonder if they might be less likely to move him right now because of the injuries to Kempe and to Arvidsson. A guy like Turcotte might be more likely to get moved. There's other guys in the system too that would be interesting. So, I really don't know how Jake's no trade, because he has a modified no trade, what teams he's got blocked or whatnot. I don't know if there's much desire for him to go west or what. He can't block everybody, though, so at the end of the day, it's a business. We know that his agent has spoken out that he'd like to get more playing time, and obviously if that has to be elsewhere, which I don't think he really wants it to be, but if that's how it's going to be, he could help the LA Kings, there's no doubt. They could use some more insurance in goal, and he could work probably well with a guy like Talbot as a tandem. So we'll see. And Friedman's also talking a lot about other teams looking for goaltending, and brought up today on the Jeff Merrick show that he has no doubt that the Ottawa Senators are a team that's definitely in the mix for goaltending help. We've seen last night was another example of why they need to do that. By the time we get to next year, between Korpisalo and Forsberg, it's believed there's a possibility at the very least that neither will be there. At least they feel that there's a better chance that they could actually maybe trade Forsberg. Might have to eat a little bit of money on the deal, but he doesn't have nearly as much term left as Korpisalo. I think the Korpisalo contract, to be completely honest, I don't know that they can move that without eating a ton of money, and they might not want to do that. They might be trending towards a buyout. That was probably, I know we went on a lot about the summer of Pierre in the last couple of years before he was fired, but in all honesty, that's turned out by far the worst one he's done of all the moves he made. Forsberg has been good at times, but just can't seem to carry a heavy workload. The thing with Anton Forsberg is he'll give you 2-3 solid games, and then after that it seems to fall off. The more he works, the more inconsistent he seems to get. So I know like last night was a stinker for him in Washington, but the 2 or 3 starts before that were really, really solid. But that seems to be the thing with the Sens. Thankfully, more often than not lately, they've had better results, but you have to. But one goalie that Friedman mentions is maybe being somebody they'll look into is Linus Ullmark in Boston. He did mention Saros. Like Ullmark and Saros would be the main two. Again, division rival Boston. I don't know that that's something that happens before the deadline. I don't think it would be. That's probably more of a summer deal. If it did indeed happen, would Allmark go to Ottawa? He does have a form of a modified no trade as well. What would they have to give up for it? It's difficult to say. It's really difficult. I don't know. They might have to give up one of their top 3 centers. And do they want to do that? I mean, goaltending is such a critical spot, and they have the guys lined up to take over. Like, for example, let's say they move Josh Norris. Well, they have Stützle, they have Pinto, who have both proven they can be top 6 centers. They've got Ridley Gregg and playing on the wing right now, who could easily go back to his natural spot of center for the third line. And they could still be in pretty good shape. So to be honest, if that's a deal that works for both sides, maybe it's something we see visited. They might be able to help each other, even though it's not super common to see the division rivals do a lot of business together in that sense. So we'll have to see where that goes. But Ottawa has every reason to be in on the goaltending market, as Friedman said. It's by far their biggest weakness. They've had 16 goaltenders in the mix play at least a few games since Brady Tkachuk has been in Ottawa. That goes to show you. In that same time frame, the Winnipeg Jets have had 4. So stability between the pipes is huge. And this year alone, the number of games that they've had above average goaltending is really low. When they get over 900 save percentage in any given game, their winning percentage was like well over 700. It was one of the best in the league. But they're not, and it's not the only issue in that team, but it's by far the biggest. You make a few other, if you can get yourself a stud goaltender, which is really, really hard to do, and then you make a few other little tweaks, I think that team could be really, really good. But they need to get some investment into a real goaltending solution. Since Craig Anderson's been, even at the end of the Craig Anderson era, he was starting to be a little bit more inconsistent too. But since his heyday, they haven't had it. They really haven't. It's been a long time, and it's such a critical spot. So let me know your thoughts. Could the Sens and Bruins hook up, or is Jake Allen heading to LA? Will Vegas get Jake Guentzel? Let me know your thoughts on all the latest trade rumors leading into the deadline down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around, and we'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.